Live. Good morning to everybody. We are live. Welcome to Behind the Markets. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to the wonderful Stephanie for joining me. How are you doing?
Morning, Mnyumba. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks, and welcome to everybody to the Tuesday session of Behind the Markets, where we'll be going through market data, some stories, obviously, that have caught all of our attention. It is a new month. It's the 1st of August, a new month, new day, new targets, new way, new thought patterns. It's a way to get ourselves grooving and moving in the right direction. And this is a new month, new moon, obviously a new destination for everybody. But today, obviously, we will kick off on some of the market news that has been capturing your attention. Plus, we'll be talking, even though we're talking about new, we'll be talking today. We're continuing with our insurance conversation. We'll be talking about funeral insurance. You might want to stick around for that as part of your personal risk portfolio. But for now, let's get into the market data. It is 1st of August 2023, Finance Tuesday. Let's get down to it. As we saw, the Kwacha has continued back on its loss-making trajectory back at 18.84, down 1.27%. On the week, the dollar is down 2.09%, but up 7.8% on the last 30 days and up 4.12% year to date. We are basically in the middle of a hold pattern. Yesterday, we did see the stock market remain a little bit still, down 1.69% and up 13.96% year to date, with the bond market up 0.18%, down in dollars 1.14%, while interest rates have now back to where they were before there was a huge spike about 30 days ago. Now, looking into the FX board, we do see that the dollar is up 1.27%, as we said yesterday, and up 4.12%. We are starting to see that it is trading slightly above its 200-day moving average, with the last 85% of the last 30 days showing upward trends in the dollar. Now, in terms of the rand, we're seeing a decelerating rand, up 0.94%, but down 0.6% year to date, and up 2.97, down 2.97% even in the last 30 days. Now, given that the last 30 days, we have seen that 80% of the days, we've seen a rand trading upwards. So there is still pressure pushing upwards on the rand itself. Now, in terms of government bonds, we're up. The government secondary government bond index were up 0.18% yesterday, up by 15.57% year to date, with the 1 month up 2.03%. So we are still seeing that 2% upwards. That is actually now giving us at least some inflation plus gains every single month. So this was good news in terms of the month of July. Bonds are up 20% in the last month. Now, in terms of against dollars, unfortunately, bonds are down 6.03% due to the weakness of the dollar. And if we go back, we've actually seen a dollar up 7.8%. Therefore, that 2% and the 7.8% are netting off to create 6.03%. In dollars, in terms of year to date, we are seeing that the bond index is up 10.09% and only 8% below its all-time highs. Now, in terms of the GRZ composite yield, we are still seeing interest rates came down about 0.016% yesterday. On the month, interest rates are up 0.01%. But in terms of year to date, they're also up 0.45%. So we are still seeing the same steady direction in the bond market as we await for debt renegotiation. Now, surprise move came in copper yesterday, where we saw copper up 2.07%. We'll give you the news that's driving that. In the last year, copper is up 21.34%, but year to date, it's only up 5.6%. So one of the things that's actually affecting trade data, which we'll be going through tomorrow. Oil in dollars is up 0.4%, and it's down 20.48% from where it was last year, but down 0.64%. But in the last month, oil prices basically have moved up 14% from where they were last month, with gold trekking right back above 2,000, with gold up 0.36% and up 9.9% year to date in dollars. So we have strong gold moving back into the market. And finally, with wealth insurance assets, Bitcoin up 0.9%, still trading at $550,000. So 550,000 kwacha per Bitcoin. While we're seeing Ethereum up 34,000, Kwacha 968, up 0.3%. Both of them are still beneficiaries of their first quarter rally, while second quarter and now have not been so strong. While we're looking at gold as well in Kwacha, gold is up 1.64% yesterday, meaning that year to date, gold is now up 14.3%. So where are we on the broad asset look? Well, in terms of broad assets, we're still seeing that cryptocurrency year to date, as of the end of July, broad assets are showing that about 83.2% gains in terms of Bitcoin, 61% gains in terms of Ethereum year to date. Gold is up 14.4%, dollars up 4.1%, while stocks up 14% and bonds up 15%. So you can see everything moving at a general pace, except for cryptocurrency, which are highly volatile. And it is a warning that I issue to everyone that rate of return does not mean that it's a safe investment to make. It means that it's a good hedging instrument. But if you just start pouring all your money into it, it's highly likely that you can easily become the victim of volatility if you are not careful. Now, let's take a look also at our four horsemen. What are they telling us? We had a packed day of data yesterday. If we look at inflation data, we did see that Japanese industrial production was up 2%. Sorry, that's a bit of a mock area there. German import prices were down 11.4%, meaning that you're going to see lower price pressure. Remember, the two things that drive consumer inflation in a country are import prices and production prices. So we've seen PPIs down in Germany and import prices also down in Germany. This is showing signs that deflation has started to kick in. Uganda's CPI dropped to 3.9% from 4.9%, so that's a tailwind showing that inflation pressures around the world are starting to come down. Italian CPIs dropped from 6.4 to 6, while core CPIs in Italy stayed the same, in Europe stayed the same, and CPIs in Europe dropped from 5.5 to 5.3, and Kenyan CPIs also dropped from 7.9 to 7.3. So around the world, we're starting to see inflation rates coming down slowly. Now, in terms of interest rates, we did see money supply growth in South Africa pick up by 10.3 to 11.5% in terms of year-on-year money supply growth, but there was a slowdown in private sector credit in terms of the expansion of it. Bank of England also saw consumer credit pick up as well, while Bank of Japan has starting to see that their 10-year bonds are auctioning a little bit higher, while 3-month bonds in America are still auctioning a little bit higher. And mortgage lending in Britain did actually manage to grow as opposed to contract what it did in the previous month. So we're getting mixed signals from the fixed income space and also from interest rates. Now, in terms of economic growth, we've got a lot more headwinds that we're dealing with. Japanese retail sales were up by 0.1% from 5.8 to 5.9. But unfortunately, Chinese composite PMIs came down yesterday, while German retail sales went into negative. Italian GDP slowed down, European GDP slowed down, Mexican GDP stayed flat. That's more of a sideways movement. While finally, we saw that Japanese household confidence was up. So income statistics are showing that growth activity may not be as right. While industrial data also now, in terms of the industrial side of things, we saw a little bit more in terms of tailwinds that are pushing and propelling a little bit of growth. Industrial production in Japan was up from negative 2.2% to 2%. Manufacturing PMI in China, unfortunately, was negative, but it did actually start improving. While the Caxton manufacturing PMI, that one was negative and it was deteriorating. So we're getting negative economic activity in the manufacturing sector in China. Housing starts in Japan came in negative, while mortgage lending, as we pointed out in the UK, was up. Infrastructure output in India is almost double the pace of growth, while mortgage approvals in the UK also increased. So what are we seeing? Slowing inflation, higher than expected interest rates, slow growth, and industrial demand that's slowly but starting to pick up, but it's still in mixed territory. And that is the end of our market data. Now let's get into our daily deep dives for today. Yesterday's big news: the ERB adjusted upwards petroleum, diesel, and kerosene prices for August 2023. Diesel is now selling at 23 kwacha 36 ingwe from 21 kwacha 87 ingwe. Petrol has now moved from 24.93 to 25.57, and kerosene has moved up from 18.53 to 20.44. Global oil price rises are being driven by OPEC plus supply cuts, U.S. economic growth, and the expectation of rising global demand. Also, at the same time, the expectation of declining rate hikes as well by central banks around the world. While FX rates also weakened, we are also, and that FX rate weakness was also a factor that was driving due to excess USD demand despite the debt restructuring that we are facing. That's going to take some time to ripple through the economy. So as you can see, we saw a 2.5% increase in petrol prices, a 6.8% increase in diesel prices, and a 10.3% increase in kerosene prices. And you can see that all of these are pretty much in line with the global movement up from 3.5% of petrol, 6.5% of diesel, and 6.93% of kerosene, plus a 4.4% weakness in the kwacha itself. So that's what we actually started to see that has picked up the pace. Now, in terms of commodity news, we have seen that copper hits a 3-month high amid demand hopes and supply risks. Now, one of the main things that's actually driving copper upwards is that copper production in Chile is down 0.9% in June as Coldeco made downward adjustments to their annual output forecast to between 1.3 to 1.35 million tons. So Coldeco, which is the biggest Chilean mine, and remember Chile is the biggest exporter of copper, they are having problems right now. Last month, they also closed the troubled Ventanas copper smelter after almost 6 decades of operation following a series of environmental incidents. Now, on the other side of things, China is also putting in stimulus measures to boost demand for copper and also industrial activity. So on one side, you've got the biggest supplier of copper slowing down, while China, who's the biggest buyer of copper, trying to stimulate activity, especially in its weakening industrial sectors. China is really struggling at the moment. Other news for the crypto craze that's happening right now, stablecoin Tether reserves have hit a record $86.5 billion in Q2. They rose by 5.7% to $86.5 billion in Q2 2023, while it made more than $1 billion in operational profits and 30% increase from the previous quarter. U.S. regulators have obviously warned that stablecoin reserves are subject to outflows. For example, if holders rush to exchange the tokens back for traditional currency. So this is a big thing for the crypto markets. One of the things that always shows growth is what is it looking like in the stable coins market. If stable coin reserves are looking big, that's always growth in the background for the crypto markets. And finally, in the crypto news, one of the final things that we're seeing is Chinese city, in other words, Shanghai, the city of Shanghai, is looking to implement blockchain infrastructure system by 2025. The government of the city of Shanghai issued an implementation plan on July 31st to promote the development of its urban blockchain digital infrastructure system in the time frame of 2023 to 2025. So this is use cases for blockchain technology. I don't know if we're going to have Stephanie back now by any chance, but we are now moving into our topic of discussion. But please remember to share any questions that you have, anything that you'd like to ask. And we do have a few questions coming in as we probably await the return of Stephanie. We do have Christopher Mutambo, who has written following: with the price of fuel going upwards, how is the kwacha likely to perform? There's no direct correlation except for inflation pressure that does sometimes kick in and weaken the currency, but it's more the performance of the kwacha that ends up driving the fuel price, and the weakness of the performance of the kwacha is currently where the issue lies. Christopher. So it's the other way around. The problem comes from the already existing weakness of the kwacha, which has come into the fact that we have excess demand already in general. So it's not the pump price; it's actually the kwacha that's affecting the pump price. Right. So let's take a look, Stephanie. Yeah. So yeah.
We did have someone trying to call through, so if you want to give us your comment, do call 077 1616290. That, of course, is 077 1616290. We did have someone trying to come through, so if you can, then give us a call.
Please do join us. Give us a call. Check out how we're doing. So here's the question for today, Stephanie. The big question for today: funeral insurance. Is it worth it? That is the question I wanted to ask everybody who's in today. So that's our big question for today. Is funeral insurance worth it? Stephanie, what are your thoughts on that question?
Firstly, I want to ask, is everyone gonna die? And that the question is yes, we are all going to die. So of course, it would be a happy occasion if my death wouldn't bring stress to people, as in if I had planned it out, and it would be easy to actually people will be smiling Munyumba on the other side if you actually left some sort of insurance. But again, on the other side, is it worth it? How much of insurance are you giving every month? Yeah.
Hmm.
Is it too expensive? Is it a scam? A lot of people will tell you is insurance a scam.
Yeah.
So for me,
So
I
this,
think,
yeah. Continue.
is it? Is it worth it? Let's see. At first glance, I think it is, and it is not.
You're caught in between. You're somewhere in
In
the middle.
between. Yeah.
Okay.
But of
So
course,
to
there's no
those of
one
you
in
who are,
between.
so for those of you who are calling, who are watching, who are viewing, please give us your, who are listening, give us your thoughts. Is funeral insurance worth it to you? What has your experience been with funeral insurance? Possibly with a loved one, maybe. Obviously, you can't have more than one experience with your own funeral insurance because that's your final experience. But what I mean
Yeah.
is, what are your observations been? What have your worries been? Do you feel like it's something that's worth it? Do you have it? Those are questions that I would like to hear from our viewers, from anyone. Is funeral insurance worth it? So let's go into a discussion today, Stephanie, about funeral insurance. So let's go with our chart of the day. Now, this comes from FinScope 2020, which shows the percentage, the estimated percentage of Zambians who have funeral insurance, Stephanie, 1.34%. I'm going to repeat that, 1.34%. Okay, this is still better than where we were in 2015, 0.92%, but literally it's at the point, Stephanie, where it's basically I think every 60, one in every 66 of you. So
Is it because we don't believe in death?
no, I think it's because we have our funeral insurance plan is passing around a piece of paper and contributions, and so I think we have a tradition of how we deal with funerals, which is very linked to how we used to deal with them in a village setting and a family setting. So now what's happening is that every time someone passes, there's the circulation method. So I think because the circulation system is already in effect, and in fact, that's a question to ask people: which is more effective? The money circulation, where we now wait, because we almost run a funeral chirimba. We all basically contribute to
Yeah,
people's
yeah,
funerals,
the
and
family
in
group.
hopes that when we pass, it's us. Sorry, you're about to say?
Yes, I was like, that's true. You find that in most family forums today, you have to, kind of all contribute a certain figure even before you reach the funeral place.
Yeah. So this is something we all have to sit down and speak about. Like when I'm sitting down, I have to sit down with the client and say, "Do you have funeral insurance?" So that if you're worried about your loved ones, if you left them behind. So basically, only 1.3% of Zambians have funeral insurance. It's basically like 1 in 60 Zambian adults have funeral insurance. In fact, it was less than 1 in every 100 at one point. So this has improved. But wow, this is a problem. Then the other thing I'll tell you is, however, Stephanie, when you
Mhm.
ask Zambians what are the biggest major life events, the biggest, most costly life events. Number two is funeral. 20% of Zambians believe that a funeral is a major costly life event. This is only second to education, in which 56.1% of Zambians believe that education is the largest major costly life event. Yet less than 1% of Zambians have insurance. So the problem is not that Zambians don't recognize that passing away is a very expensive event. At least one in five Zambians. I'm trying to think about who are these people who think that passing away is cheap, that it's cheap to bury somebody, unless you're just grabbing them and just tossing them away. But because it's basically saying 80% of Zambians don't count a funeral as a major costly life event, maybe because they know that Ankondarama will deal with it. It's not expensive to them. It's expensive to Ankondarama, not us. We just have to tell Ankondarama how much we want for a coffin. But yes, it is considerably the second highest rated expensive life event or costly life event to a Zambian.
I think we might have a call. Let's pick this call. Hello.
Hi, Munyumba. This is Hams. After a long time.
Hello, how are you doing, Hams?
Yes,
hello. How are you doing, Hams?
Yes, just a quick question. When you say the funeral plan is, the way we send a piece of paper around, maybe the question to ask is, how sustainable and how viable is it? In different places where, we work and, in different setups where we are, when person X has a bereavement, a paper goes round. Then when person Y has a bereavement, you may not see a paper go round. Others may say, you look at even the relation sometimes, it's not even you wonder to say, should, someone comes around, I've lost, a nephew in Minirunga or somewhere far, you can see the person is not even a close relative, but, they manage to squeeze the paper to go around. And the challenge with that, sometimes it leaves an air of resentment, because others feel you're not being consistent. But beyond just funerals, it's something we do, in the, in our setups. It could be a wedding, it could be a kitchen party. Could there be ground rules, or it's just one of those things we have to live with? How sustainable is it? When does it end? When does it stop? And depending on the setups, if it's a particular type of person, you contribute, a certain amount. If it's a higher profile of the person, it's like you're also compelled to contribute higher amounts. It's like the wild, wild west when it comes to these things, as a financial advisor, what's your 2 cents on this? Thank you.
Thank you. Just before you respond, Munyumba, there could be somebody that has a question. Do call us on 077-1616-290 to give us your concern on the topic that we have today, as well as a question or a quick suggestion. For me, I'm thinking, should it be mandatory? But let's give Munyumba the chance to explain.
Well, I understand where Hams is coming from, and this one of the reasons why people have their own funeral insurance policy is so that certain things like that don't have to pass around, or if you have family ones. And I understand that we have a high poverty nation, and it makes it very difficult to have these. But he's right. One of the problems with the paper circulation thing is that what if it comes the day you don't have money? And the thing about burying someone in Zambia is that you have to bury somebody within 3 days. There's no holding someone in a mortuary for a month. Yeah, and it's a very narrow space. From the point a person drops to the point you're putting them in the ground, max you've got 5 days. Maximum you've got 5 days. Okay? But really, this happens in a time space of 4 days. Now, coming up with contributions within 4 days, 5 days becomes very difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah, people
and then trying to
trace.
circulate. Yeah. And you also can't time when a person passes away. You can't ask, please, can you pass away around payday or after payday? So that you can't ask someone when to pass away. I mean, that's not something they also intended on doing themselves. So this is the kind of the reason why we have policies, because of the erratic nature of funerals. And the nature of passing away, and also the fact that it's a very stressful event. You've just lost somebody, you're trying to grieve, but simultaneously you're now looking for money, and you're looking
Yeah.
for, and looking for money is also a very stressful activity. It's demeaning, it's painful. There's a lot. And also what Mr. Hams is talking about, where he said in certain workplaces, because certain people have got connections and they know who the people who circulate the papers are, they easily get support. Other than other people who, when someone passes away, they don't easily get support, because maybe you don't have the friendships and the connections within your workplace. Maybe you're not such a social figure, and because you're being punished for the fact that you lack social skills in a workplace where raising money for you becomes difficult. So this is an issue. The current practice of paper circulation and fundraising becomes difficult. One, because of timing. Two, because of human factors. Popularity plays a role in how much money you can raise for your funeral, okay, from people, as opposed to people being able to now take out possibly funeral policies for themselves. Now, remember, Stephanie, insurance is nothing but pooling of risk. So all of us give our money to an insurance company, because those of us who face those bad incidences can then get paid out. So effectively, insurance is almost like circulation of paper, but in a more sustainable way, where you get out basically what for exactly what you've put in. And this is what we're going to be talking about in terms of that. But the question Hams was asking is, how sustainable is it? It's not. It's not sustainable. It's a very tricky system, and this is why there's a lot of inequality in that system. And we do find some workplace resentment. Yeah.
And do you think it should be mandatory? Now, I'm actually thinking to myself, I think something that is enforced rather works out good. So I think going forward, these are one of the issues we'd like to look at, maybe just trying to people. So I think it's okay.
Okay, so this is why I'm saying perhaps maybe, and if you're talking about enforcing these things, then perhaps maybe funeral insurance becomes an important thing. Then funeral insurance as a policy becomes an important thing to add to people's lives, and also so that people can have it to avoid a lot of this workplace stress, or just even in general to avoid a lot of stress. So I wanted to go back to your pillars of financial freedom so that everybody remembers there are 4 pillars of financial freedom. You are financially free when you are free from worrying about meeting your basic needs, when you are free from worrying about the well-being of your loved ones, you are free to pursue meaning with your time, and you are free from chaos and disorder. So what does funeral insurance cover? It covers number 2 and number 4. Where you're worried about leaving your Chris Rock had an old saying. He said, rich people die, leave a will, poor people die and leave a bill. He said, what you don't want to do is leave stress for people to just bury you, just to say goodbye to you. So you want to give them the ability that should you pass away, you want them to just engage in the emotional side of it as opposed to the financial and logistical side of it. The second thing you're also trying to do also is freedom from worrying of chaos and disorder, that your death will cause chaos and disorder in your family. Okay? It'll cause a lot of chaos in people just trying to figure things out. It already has caused chaos in emotionally. Now it's going to cause financial upheaval. Because when you pass away, all of a sudden, Uncle such and such from the village has to now come, get fed, stay around. Somebody has to give him something to go back. And you're like, but now this person has never even seen this person when they're alive. So there's also so much resentment that happens even at these events themselves. So funerals are costly, stressful battlegrounds. There's already so much already intrinsically built into them that you don't want to add the extra layer of financial stress. So let's go through these kind of topics all together. Now, remember, I gave you this risk matrix that whenever you're looking at probability at events that could occur in your life, you look at what is the probability or frequency it could occur. Okay, what is the probability or frequency this thing occurs in your life? And two, what is the impact in terms of what is the financial cost or life cost? So a funeral is something that falls into the category, your funeral, Stephanie, your own one, it falls into the category of high, it's low probability, because you're only going to die once. As in, it's not, you're not going to wake up every morning and die. As in, this is going to happen once. Okay, so it's a low probability event, but it's a very high impact. It has a high cost to it. Okay, because that's your life. You want to make sure you get buried with dignity. So you also want to make sure that you transfer. So it goes into the bottom right quadrant of transfer the cost. Now, people around you passing away, facing funerals at work, facing funerals in family, that's a bit more of a higher probability, but a lower cost event. So you probably want to try and reduce that risk. Now, your loved ones passing away is also a high impact, low probability event. So transferring it to a policy. Now, this quadrant always helps us understand how to deal with unforeseen circumstances that may happen in the future. Do we want to reduce the risk? Do we want to avoid the incident? Do we want to accept the risk? Or do we want to transfer it to something like an insurance policy or an asset? That's what we kind of do in there. So basically, funeral insurance is a type of life insurance used to pay for funeral services, merchandise costs of after death. So it's a cash policy, okay, that's usually purchased for a small amount. Premiums tend to be very affordable. If you actually look at funeral insurance plans, you do get things like 30 kwacha, 40 kwacha per month. Those are affordable. It's just that we don't prioritize them because we think our death is far away and we don't want to think about it. Some people think if you think about death, you're even inviting it. Those are answers we've gotten in these industries. And in most cases, policies can be bought without even a medical exam. So most policies are only provided for, and I've seen in Zambia, the cutoff age is about 70. So what they don't want is somebody starts to look for a funeral policy above 70 years old. So if you start contributing to one before 70, you can have one for a long period of time. So policies also can be issued. Policies can be issued by insurance providers and some even by funeral parlors themselves. So some funeral parlors have got insurance plans where they tell you contribute, and then we'll be able to provide you our services as well. So you can cut the middleman out and actually go directly to the funeral parlor that has an insurance policy that you can subscribe to. So in the event of your death, the passing of your loved ones, the passing of your children, according to the people they can allow for, you can actually have an insurance policy there. Now, the types you can get, I want to give you some of the types. You can have a policy for yourself, as in this is you going to an insurance policy provider and acquiring a policy yourself. Your workplace can provide you one if you're in a formally employed workplace, or you can also have group schemes. You can have a group of marketeers. Maybe there's one that's provided for a set of marketeers. I've seen that done as well, so that marketeers can contribute together. So you can have employer or group schemes. You can also get it through your bank. Some banks offer something called bank assurance. They've got insurance policies as well. So the banks also act as the pooling agents where you can contribute, and maybe it's even part of your banking fees. That's sometimes what they do as well. And then there's also diaspora policies. If you're a Zambian living abroad, this is very important. You cannot be buried in another person's country. So repatriating your body already becomes a very big expense. And I've seen this living in the diaspora. I've seen sometimes people are not able to bury themselves. So even getting their body back to Zambia was a problem. So people living outside of Zambia need to make sure they've got policies, especially ones that also now introduce the fact that you need to have your body brought back to Zambia, and also to be able to have some people travel back in case you pass away in another person's country and you are not a citizen of that country. You need to be able to be brought back to this country. So these are the 4 kinds of policies that I've seen that you need to ask yourself, I think, whether I should have this or not. You can start with your workplace or your group if you have it. Your bank also provides one. Those ones are quite effective as well, while direct policies also require you to screen them. Now, there are some factors, Stephanie, that have affected people's ability to take on funeral policies. One is mindset factors. Do we understand them? People don't understand funeral policies. They're just thinking I'm putting money somewhere and in case I die, but I won't know whether this thing, how does it work? What is insurance? So there's literacy issues and education issues that affect it. Also perceptions. I've seen some people, Stephanie, who say that if I get a funeral insurance policy, I'm inviting the spirit of death into my life. And I answered to that, the spirit of death was coming when you were born. Like, this is reality. Death is the part of life. And also traditions. In South Africa, one of the ways they sell funeral insurance policies, actually, Stephanie, is they tell people that there's a South African belief that if you do not bury your loved ones with dignity, they will haunt you for the rest of your life. So what people do is multiple people take out policies. So like, let's say a parent, all the children will take out a funeral policy on a parent. That's why the funeral insurance industry in South Africa is of high sales, because it's a cultural factor that stimulates sales in South Africa. While Zambia, you may find it's the misinterpretation of our religion that leads to people saying, I don't need a funeral policy. Other factors that also affect it is income and poverty levels, though funeral insurance policies tend to be cheaper. The cost of coverage, the ease of access, that can be a problem. It has to be linked to a bank account. Some people are not as friendly, though there are some funeral insurance service providers who are starting to provide it even on mobile money. Check your mobile money wallets. You're starting to see that there. And also a person's regularity of cash flow. In order to have an insurance policy, you need to be able to pay the premium regularly. So there's part of the problem that people have. And also some of the things is even what is covered? What are the benefits? Are the benefits available to me? What type of risk is it covering usually affects what kind of insurance people are getting. So we've actually seen, Stephanie, that where people have a problem with funeral insurance is they don't even understand the product. And it from two perspectives. They don't understand the price. They don't understand the coverage. They don't understand the details. Sometimes they're just even forced to take it up. And then sometimes they also don't understand how insurance works. What is insurance? So that's why we think the circulation of paper is an okay system. We don't know that perhaps maybe insurance may be a better system where you're just already putting away to your policy. And if anything happens to you or your loved ones, it's taken care of. So that those who want to mourn can now just come and mourn, as opposed to trying to use circulation of money systems, which are just ill-timed half the time and can be very unfortunate to a person. So what is it that drives people, Stephanie, to struggle to actually learn about funeral insurance? And these are six factors that I've seen. The current funeral fundraising model, which I call Uncle Ndarama syndrome, where we're hoping that we can circulate a piece of paper and someone rich will pledge a lot. Okay? Or we've got a very rich uncle in our family or aunt who we know is just going to come and just drop some stash for us, and they're going to come and show us because that's their use in the family. Also, there's also a poor product orientation. The products are not exactly well linked to the people. It doesn't seem to understand people very well. So even in the insurance industry, there's a lot of trying to tailor the product to the culture. I gave you the example of South Africa, where they talk about the fact that if you don't bury your loved ones with dignity, they'll haunt you. That becomes a way to sell it and package it to people. If you don't want your loved ones to haunt you, you may want to get a policy. So I know that's not how we want to do it, but I'm just saying that's something you want to try and look at, how to make it culturally appropriate. There's also assumed education, that people with higher levels of education understand insurance when they really have a shallow understanding of it. They really don't understand how it works. Some insurance policies are automated, so your workplace already provides for it, so you have no idea what it is, and you don't even want to try and learn what it is. And then there's also even the people who are selling insurance products tend not to even know what they're selling. They just sell to make money, and they don't even know what they're selling, why they're selling, and how it works. So even the training of the sales officers for insurance become an issue. So what are the alternatives also, Stephanie, to a funeral insurance policy? Instead of getting one with an insurance company, is that you can also prepay your insurance policy. You can prepay your insurance, your funeral needs. You can go and buy land at a burial site. Though people will think you're conducting witchcraft, that's where the problem comes. But if you can actually go and pre-buy your burial site, Abraham did it in the Bible. He actually bought his burial site when Sarah died and said, all my relatives will be buried here. This is for me, and all my relatives will be buried here. So he bought the burial site. You can also contribute to a savings account, which is specifically for this. Put it into a trust, and then only give specific people access upon your passing, so that they can use it for funeral expenses. So you can also just put money aside into an account if you'd like. But just remember, this requires a lot more than just insurance. In case you're worried, the insurance company may pay out a little bit too late. And finally, Stephanie, one of the other models people can utilize, insurance does not cover your workmate's nephew from Winilunga, as Hams was talking about. It does not cover that. So sometimes you want to ask yourself, how much cash should I have in my cash reserve just in case? So I would say make a list of the people who you would contribute to. Who are the people in your circle, your friends, your uncle, the people who can't be covered by an insurance policy? Put aside the amount you would contribute to their funeral, the total number of people, and multiply it by the probability of demise, which is about 2.43%. So I've given you an example there. Say you have 50 people on a list who would have funerals in their life that you'd put around. You'd say, okay, 50, and then you'd say 500. I would contribute 500 kwacha to those people's funerals. 2.43% divided by 12. That's about 50 kwacha, 62 ngwe that you're putting aside somewhere in an account, so that you know part of your cash reserve, so that you can cover that. So you can do cash reserve build-ups for that as well. So these are the alternatives to the way we can handle the eventualities of funerals in our lives. We do have one comment here from Vernon, very quickly as we wind up, who has written, and it's a bit of a long one because I can see funerals are personal for people. Is a funeral insurance worth it? Insurance for me can be tackled in two regards. One, could work with an insurance company, and it seems to have worked just fine for others. Another way would be that one can actually deal with it before you die, where you're not sure when we might pass on, but at some point. So why not set up some streams of income, primarily leave wealth and knowledge, because when your loved ones are left with cash, they will not stress handling your funeral processions. And we don't know what the final part is, but yeah, they will not stress handling your funeral processions. So you can leave cash, so that's another option. You can leave an insurance policy, which gives things. It just depends on which way you're more comfortable with and how you'd like to handle your passing. I will leave you with one quote, Stephanie, from Seneca the Young, who is a Greek philosopher. And he says this: every journey has an end. Okay? So you cannot, I'm sorry to say this to people, but you cannot, even as a Christian, you cannot pray away the fact that one day you will have to pass away. Now, how would you like to the ones you left behind to handle that? Do you want to leave them with stress? Do you want to leave chaos in a situation? Because funerals cause chaos. This is what they do. They cause chaos, people. We don't want to admit it. They cause chaos. Or do you want them to peacefully mourn you so that they can deal with the pain and not have to deal with the financial strain? That is where I'll leave it today, Steph.
Definitely. Thank you, Munyumba, for always giving us some insights, a thought to actually think about the whole day. And as we actually get to break it today, we did also have a comment from Tumelo. And Tumelo says the cost of insurance is expensive. And the problem is with the insurance companies. They've created a bad reputation in terms of bailouts. And that's why the problem is. That's Tumelo actually commenting.
Okay.
And on that note,
that's true.
On that note, Munyumba, it's bye for now. Until tomorrow again. See you.
Till tomorrow. See you tomorrow.